I, 40 male, was married to my wife, 37 female, for almost 12 years. We would have celebrated our 12th marriage anniversary in a few months, but unfortunately she passed away around 6 weeks ago. My wife was diagnosed with leukemia around 5 years ago, and she fought long and hard. But I still lost her. I spent a lot of time with her in these past few years and was her primary caregiver, so I don't regret anything since I know that I tried my very best. My wife was a writer before she passed. She had written some stories, but it was known to only a very niche audience, so it didn't earn much, which is why she took to ghostwriting and made a lot of money. I have a bookstore of my own, and while I'm not as successful as my wife, I still make a comfortable living on my own and my wife's will. She left me most of her money and assets, which was quite a lot. After settling her medical bills, it came up to around $750,000. She'd left her family with $75,000 as well, but nothing else. And even that seemed way too much for me. The reason was that her family wasn't really very attached to her, and even in her last days, they barely ever visited her in hospital. They would only ever call when they needed money, and she would happily send them whatever amount they said. But I guess while she was in the hospital, she realized that they didn't love her as much as she thought they did, which made her change her will and leave a lot less money to them than she'd initially intended to. Her family included her parents and her two younger brothers, both in their late 30 seconds. Now one of them runs their family diner and the other works at a law firm. Anyway, last week her family dropped by very unexpectedly and said that they had to discuss something urgent with me. I was a little confused since they had barely even spoken to me after the funeral, or even while my wife was sick, as a matter of fact. So them just visiting me out of the blue to talk about something important seemed kind of fishy to me. Once they were seated, they brought out a bunch of papers and told me to go through them. They were letters and notices from several people about my wife's death. And now that they've received word that she's passed away, they need me to clear those debts at the earliest, or else I'll be in trouble. I was shocked, since I didn't even know that my wife had any debts to speak of since she lived a clean life. And like I mentioned earlier, we didn't need to borrow money. We were comfortable enough to afford the things we wanted or needed. So this whole debt business seemed crazy to me. Her family explained that she'd racked up a lot of debts while she'd been living by herself and still hadn't paid them off, even though she had the means to. She told them to keep it a secret from me, but now the debtors were harassing them, and they couldn't afford to pay it all off at once, since it was all coming up to $100,000 because of the time and interest. I was dumbstruck at that moment, since even though I definitely could pay it all off, it would create a significant debt. And I also found it very hard to believe that someone as meticulous as my wife would refuse to pay her debts are. There was a short period before we met, and after she'd moved out of her family home, where she'd been living on her own and hadn't yet made it as a writer yet that she told me about. So that part of the story definitely checked out. She'd even confessed to having a hard time dealing with the bills and said that she'd had to take up several tutoring jobs to be able to make ends meet before her book was finally published. But she never mentioned anything about loans or debts, and not once in our 12 years of marriage had anything of the sort ever come up. So her family's visit and these papers had taken me by surprise. I could hardly believe that my wife would do something like this and keep such a huge secret from me. And the more I thought about it, the less likely it seemed. I told her family that I'd need some time to arrange for the money since they'd requested it to be in all cash. And they seemed kind of annoyed that I wasn't just handing them over the money right then and there. But they didn't say anything and told me I had a week. The next day, however, I decided to talk to my late wife's secretary to discuss her finances because something about this whole situation just seemed off. I asked her if my wife had ever mentioned any debts of the sort, and even showed her the papers, and she looked just as surprised as I did. She told me that my wife had absolutely zero debts left to clear before she passed, and so these were news to her. These debtors were all loan sharks as well, so I didn't really have any way to check out if they were legit or not. And so-called documents that I'd been handed were mostly letters about how it would be unwise to try to evade them any longer, now that they'd finally tracked us down and seemed threatening. If I'm being honest for a second, I thought my best bet would be to just give her family the money and let them take care of it all, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was being toyed with. So I decided to speak to my wife's best friend, her cousin, and she ended up telling me a lot of things that drove away any fear that I had. She told me that all those papers that I'd been handed were probably forged by my wife's parents since they'd been after her money ever since she made a name for herself as a writer. She had even left home voluntarily. She'd been kicked out by her parents after college since she'd wanted to be a writer, and her parents didn't think it was a very stable career option. After a lot of fights and arguments, they told her that they weren't interested in speaking to her unless she started making sufficient money and kicked her out. That really hurt her. But she didn't turn back or give up and started working part-time as a waitress, tutoring kids, and even working on her books alongside all of that to keep going. And no, she'd never taken a single loan from anyone and was completely self-made. My wife's friend was 100% convinced that my in-laws were lying to me and told me to test my theory by speaking to my lawyer and cross-checking and just to decline my in-laws' request to see how they react. So I took her advice and decided to tell her family that I was not giving them any money and I would deal with the debtors directly myself. And just as I'd expected, they were outraged at the suggestion and started telling me that the money had to be handed over to them first. In any case, and my refusing to do so meant that I didn't trust them. I was already feeling pretty suspicious about the whole situation, and their reaction just confirmed all my doubts. They most definitely were lying, and all it would take was for my lawyer to deduce if the documents were forged or not. So after a couple of days, he confirmed that all the loan sharks that they named had been contacted, and none of them had ever even heard of, let alone loaned any money to my wife. So she was in the clear. I just couldn't believe that her family was harassing their late daughter's husband for money just a couple of weeks after her passing. This was the lowest thing that they could do, and they did so. Honestly, if they just asked me for money, then I probably would have given it to them anyway, because I have way more than enough right now to lead a comfortable life. But they chose to lie and tricked me, and even tried to make my wife seem like a careless and dishonest person, which I absolutely could not forgive. They've been trying to contact me, but I haven't responded yet because I don't know what to say to them yet. They plan to just throw me under the bus and take much more than they were owed, and in my opinion, they weren't owed much since they'd never bothered to treat my wife well. So I think even what she left for them was much more than they deserve. I'm thinking about cutting them off entirely and suing them for the money that my wife had left to them. They don't deserve it even one bit, and I could think of several other people who had actually been there for her when she was sick and could do with the money very honestly. W. Ibt. If I sued my late wife's family over their inheritance. Update 1. I finally answered their calls and spoke to my father-in-law. He was pestering me about the money and asked me when I'd be handing them the cash since the debtors were hounding them mercilessly now. Obviously, I knew that he was lying to me now, and I told him that I'd cross-checked with our family lawyer. And I knew that he faked all those papers just to take the money from me, and he could drop the act now. Well, the first few minutes after my accusation, he pretended not to know what I was talking about and said that I'd lost my mind, but I remained firm on my point, and eventually he was forced to admit that he'd been lying. But then he started trying to emotionally manipulate me by saying that it was totally unfair that my wife had left most of her money to me instead of them, since they're the ones who had raised her and had made her capable of becoming such a successful writer in the first place. So they were owed a lot more than they were given. It was ironic to hear him saying that because while they had raised her, they'd also been the ones to kick her out and refuse to help her out when she was struggling. They didn't even contact her until her first book started selling well, which was several years after she'd been kicked out. But she'd been kind enough to welcome them back into her life with open arms. Even then, they hadn't been kind to her and would only use her for her money. They didn't visit her when she was sick, and neither did they try to arrange anything for her funeral. So in my opinion, whatever they'd been given was more than enough. I told them that I wouldn't be giving them even a single dollar more than what they already had, and informed them of my decision to sue them as well. That led to some more outrage, and he tried to argue with me, but I wasn't interested in what he had to say and just hung up. I blocked them all so that they cannot contact me anymore and have told our lawyer to file a lawsuit against them at the earliest. My in-laws were served with the lawsuit today, and they were very unhappy about it, obviously, but they decided to let me know how unhappy they were by paying me a visit and trying to make me feel guilty for stealing their inheritance from them. I was shocked that they'd even had the guts to show up at my house after what they tried to do. And while I told them to leave me alone from within the house itself without even opening the door, they were very stubborn and refused to leave without having a word with me first. It was my father-in-law and his wife who'd come to visit me, and I think they thought that they could make me feel sorry for them by sobbing about how they were in mourning already, and now they were about to lose so much money as well. I don't know why they believe I would buy their silly sympathy-seeking act, since I, for one, knew exactly how heartlessly they treated my wife. She might have forgiven them because they were her family, but they weren't my family. And so I had no need to forgive them at all. After they were done ranting, I told them that I wasn't going to change my mind, and they needed to leave before I called the police to forcefully escort them out. That rubbed them the wrong way, and my mother-in-law started lecturing me about the importance of family values and how I should be standing by their side at a time like this when both families are grieving such a huge loss. But instead, I'm suing them over something as petty as money. I thought that was bold of her, since they'd never thought about any of this, when just weeks ago they were lying to me and trying to trick me into giving up my share of the money for their own grief. And after how they treated my wife, it was funny to hear her talk about family values because their family lacked any values at all. I told them to leave once more or else I really would call the police, and that led to them finally leaving. They were very pissed off by the time they left and told me that I would definitely lose this one. But I didn't care about winning or losing. I was doing this more for my wife than for myself. She never tried to put her family in their place because she was just too kind and forgiving. But I am not that person. And moreover, after my wife's death, I don't feel like I have even to try and maintain the facade of a happy relationship with my in-laws anymore. They're nothing more than parasites who were leeching off of my wife's money. And now it's time to make sure they learn what happens to leeches once they're found. I have no regrets about what I'm about to do, and if people find me ruthless, then so be. Update 3. We had the first hearing today, and it was difficult facing my in-laws in such a formal and legal setting. I did think that my wife wouldn't be happy with what I'm doing, and it probably isn't my place to sue them anyway for her sake. But then, I remembered their capacity for cruelty even after her death, and that made things a bit easier. Right off the bat, I brought up the way they tried to extort money out of me through deception and lies, and they didn't decline it. Instead, they owed up to it because then they'd be able to build up to their own emotional sob story. Their lawyer accused me of manipulating their daughter to keep most of her assets and money to myself, while they only received a very small sum. Apparently, I was a controlling husband who took advantage of my wife's illness and forced her to sign her will against her wishes and made her leave everything to me while my in-laws were cheated out of it all. I wasn't even surprised that they were coming up with this rubbish story to malign my image, since they are most certainly very capable of such things. My lawyer was there to defend me, however, and even though everyone present in the room knew that I was absolutely not the guy that they were making me out to be, we still had to prove it. And that's going to be a piece of cake for me. I guess they should have thought things through before lying through their teeth about my character, because whatever they said was certainly not going to be a match with what all of our friends and the rest of my wife's family had seen. Anyway, after the meeting, my in-laws still approached me and told me to take back the lawsuit and let this go. But I wasn't going to back down. At least not now, because then they think that it was okay to harass me for the rest of my life, just like they'd done to my wife. And I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I told them that they could come up with all the lies about me that they wanted to, but the truth was going to be out eventually. So I wasn't too worried for myself, and they couldn't intimidate me into backing off now either. My wife's brothers tried to tell me off for speaking to their parents rudely, but I had no time to spare for these people and just drove off. We'll meet again 2 weeks later, and I'm going to gather all the proof I can to prove that whatever they're making me out to be is absolutely not the case. And it's just a bunch of lies that they made up to get the money quicker and easier, and I know it's going to be easy for me. Update. For only 2 days have passed since the hearing, and today itself, my in-laws have started trying to mess with me, but they ended up worsening their own situation. It's almost 7 in the morning right now, and I've had the craziest night, honestly. At around midnight, I heard some footsteps around my house, but I was really tired, so I dismissed it, thinking that it must have been my exhaustion getting to me and didn't pay any mind to it, and just went to sleep. Only an hour later, I was woken by the sound of glass breaking and the loud that outside my house, followed by another two. I was really alarmed and stayed in bed for the next few minutes until I was sure that my neighbors were outside as well. As soon as I heard the hubbub outside, I went out to check what had happened and saw that all the windows of my neighbor's car had been smashed in with rocks that had messages scrawled on them in chalk. It said "back off" in white letters. And immediately I knew that this was probably something that my wife's brothers had done. It was hilarious to me that instead of making sure that they were getting the right car, they'd ruined the wrong one. My neighbor was a young woman in her late 22nd who had a toddler, and she worked hard, and she'd been excited about this car as well. She'd bought it just a few weeks ago, and now it had been messed up. She was distraught and was sobbing even after the cops had been called because obviously this was bound to hurt. I explained the situation to her and how my wife's brothers must have gotten the wrong car in the dark. My car was in the garage, but my neighbor usually leaves her car parked in the driveway since her garage was being renovated. I even offered to pay for the repairs right away, but she told me that I need not worry about this in the middle of everything that I've got going on and said that she'd handle it. Of course, she meant that she was going to press charges against my wife's brothers and make them pay for it, which just made me feel better. She was really sweet about it, thankfully, probably because she'd been good friends with my wife. But anyway, around 15 minutes after that, the police showed up on the scene and we explained everything to them as well. And I even provided the address of the brothers to them. I went down to the police station with my neighbor. Well, another one of our neighbors offered to stay home with her kid and that we had to wait for around half an hour while they made the arrest. It didn't take too long, even though they tried to resist like fools. They'd been so sure that they had the right car and that I wouldn't dare call the cops on them that they'd been caught completely off guard. Once the police showed up and were trying to escape through the fire escape, which obviously didn't work, and even after that, they tried to push aside the officers present and make a run for it. So things were looking pretty bad for them. Once they saw me, they started screaming at me about how all of this was my fault and I'd killed their sister, as if their dramatic outburst was going to help their situation in the slightest. After my neighbor had pressed charges and had identified them as the perpetrators, we were free to go. I got home around an hour ago and haven't been able to sleep since then, since I've been pretty stressed out all about this as well. I just want them to leave me alone at this point. Update 5. The Little Guys. 3 weeks have passed since I last updated you guys on what was happening, and I'm happy to inform everyone that my in-laws no longer have the $75,000 that they'd inherited from my wife. They had to settle and give it all to me. Plus, they had to pay my neighbor for the damage they'd caused to her car as well. My wife's brothers got into quite a fair bit of trouble for what they'd done, and it went on their record, which helped me prove my point in court about them being greedy for money and nothing else. Of course, the evidence was stacked against them otherwise as well, so it was no big surprise that they lost the suit. My in-laws haven't contacted me since then, and I'm thankful for that. Good freaking riddance, honestly. Anyway, like I said, I had no intention of keeping the money for myself since I was content with whatever I had. Instead, I split the money between all the people who had actually been there for my wife when she needed it the most. I paid off her secretary with the sum even though she said she couldn't accept it. What I know for a fact that my wife considered her practically family, and it went both ways. So after much insistence, she accepted it as a gift from me. I also sent a bit of money to her cousin, who had visited her every single weekend, even though she lived 2 hours away. But she'd still driven down to the hospital to see my wife and make her feel better about everything. She's a really happy-go-lucky woman, and the only 2 times I've seen her tear up was first at my wife's funeral and second when I handed her the check and thanked her for always being there for us. This whole process was really emotional for me, but I'm glad that I went through with it and did something good for the people who'd been there for my way. I hope she's happy wherever she is. Am I the a-hole for not backing up my family after my wife giggled at their news? I, 27, now have a beautiful wife, Amira, 26 female. Anyway, on to the situation that happened a week ago. When I was 17, I had a girlfriend who cheated on me for my brother. We were together since kindergarten, even though our relationship was fake in elementary school and middle school. We decided to make it official in high school, but after a year of making it official, my brother tells me that she and him were seeing each other behind my back. I was extremely hurt, especially since my parents knew, but they thought that the relationship was still a playful one, even though I told them the news first. After that, I decided to focus just on school and move out of my parents' house, especially since they didn't have the decency to at least be romantically involved in private. She still tried to apologize and asked if we could be friends, but I just ignored her. After I graduated, I moved to Texas at age 19 and only contacted my family on the holidays. After 2 years of being there, I met Amira at a bakery her mother owned, and we became friends first due to us having trust issues. But we made it official after a year of meeting. Their relationship was great, loved our family, and they loved me. The wedding was absolutely wonderful, even though my parents and brother didn't come. even though I sent an invitation and called them the day before. And I realized that if my wife were ever in an argument with someone, even if she was wrong, I'd always have her back. Now, a week ago, my mother called me to ask if we could talk. She was on speaker since Maria and I were cooking. She knows about what my family has done and how they backed up my brother, so I didn't mind putting the phone on speaker since the only conversations I have with my family is about my brother. Well, my mom goes on to tell me how my brother and ex are getting married, and he wants me to be his best man. It was silent for a bit and a burst out with giggles, and I joined her afterwards. My mom hung up, and I didn't bother calling her back and enjoyed my night with my wife. Then this morning, I was bombarded with angry texts from my brother and dad on how I hurt my mother's feelings and made her cry by not telling my wife to not laugh. I don't think I did anything wrong. I technically didn't do anything, but I can somewhat say that it was childish, but it was a spur of the moment thing. So am I. The a-hole for not backing up my mom? And now for the type of comments before reading the update. Wait, why is your mom asking you to be your brother's best man? That's super weird. Why isn't that coming from him? Very clearly not the a-hole. Laughing is about the nicest thing that you can do in a situation like this. Although there was a great post a while back about somebody who accepted being best man and then gave a speech recounting all the details of the cheating, dropped the mic, and left. So that's always an option for you. She was the messenger. He asked her to ask me. Borg. Teddy says, not the whole. It's kind of funny how they didn't show up for your wedding, but you to be there for your brothers. Did they give you an explanation on why they were a no-show? If I had to guess, then they want you there is because people are bound to ask why you weren't at your brother's wedding, and they want to save face. They said my brother felt sick and he didn't want to go, so they decided to stay with him too, Tab says. So your wife now giggled because she was sick and you decided to stay with her. Not the whole. This person says not their whole. The reason I would think an estranged brother who skipped your wedding would want you as his best man as he marries your childhood ex is to make sure he rubs it in your face one more time. And your parents didn't come to your wedding either. And your mother decided she could be the messenger. What the F is wrong with your birth family? Now for the update. Update 1. Hi, everyone. I'm here to let everyone know what happened the week after the initial situation. After the week of the incident and many, many rude texts from my brother and father, I decided to contact my brother and told him how it was unfair to not come to my wedding, but then ask him to come to his. While some of you were spot on, my brother didn't want to come to my wedding, so my mother made up a lie instead of telling the truth. And he never asked for me to be his best man, nor was I even invited. I called my mother and asked her what the hell was going on, and she told me that she just wanted her sons to get along again, even if I were to accept the now fake offer. This situation would have gone way worse since I wasn't invited. I decided for the sake of my wife and I's future, I will be limiting contact with my side of the family. I have also mentioned in the comments that my wife is pregnant, so I have that to look forward to. Instead of a shit show, Amara. And I also appreciate the kind words from some of you. Update 2, I think I posted the first update last night or yesterday. I don't remember, but hello again. The situation has now spread from just my wife and I to my wife's side of the family. A friend of my ex found the person. I guess the news spread like wildfire, and I was now getting texts from my immediate family and my ex and my brother's friends. I've ignored it at first until some really hurtful things were said about my wife regarding her family and pregnancy, which caused my wife to have a panic attack since she couldn't calm down. I don't know if I could say what they had said since it was very harsh and racist. I have now gone from limited text to ignoring my whole family. I have decided to turn off my phone altogether, but I do appreciate every one of you. But I'm going to take this time to spend it with my wife and her family. And we are now focusing on the pregnancy and getting things ready for 9 months of fun and weird cravings. Update 3. Hello. Exactly 21 days ago, I've made a decision that has been the best decision of my life. I'm just giving a small update. 1. My family is no longer in my life. 2. My wife read the post and comments and she loves all of you but was upset that I said that. She giggled. She wanted me to clear it up and let you know it was a full cackle. 3. Our little baby is growing and healthy, hoping for a girl, but that's all. Once again, thank you all. We love you. Story 2. Update. I will leave my adoptive family overnight. I'll leave them. There will be a letter. Original post. I male 18 was adopted by my family when I was 5. I don't even know my biological parents. The family already had 3 children. 3 girls apparently. After the first girl, they tried for a boy. But it always ended up being a girl. So after 3 girls, they adopted me to finally have a son. In the first few years of my life, he treated us all well. My sisters, however, were never able to accept me. They saw me as an outsider who doesn't belong in the family. Actually, it was the oldest one called Alicia, who poisoned the other two called Maria and Juliet against me by telling them that her parents would treat me better because I was a boy, which wasn't true. In fact, all three of them protested against me getting a room and the same floor as them, and my parents gave in. There was a spare room in the basement where I had to sleep now. This, however, led to them just making fun of me, calling me names like cellar rat and many more things. I just shrugged it off, assuming that's how siblings treat each other. But I realized that having my sleeping room in the basement somehow also affected the way my parents treated me. Sleeping down there felt like I was out of sight for them. They lost interest in me, and I became less significant and important, while on the other hand, they started to focus more on my sisters. When I was 13, they completely lost interest in me. It was like I was a homeless person living in the basement. They missed all the appointments I had. They didn't care about my grades. They never even called me to eat. Sometimes I would come upstairs and see how they already took away the plates. If I was lucky, there were leftovers that I could eat. Do you think I got presents for my birthday? No, because they didn't even know my birthday in the first place. And last Christmas they said they forgot to buy presents for me, saying they will go shopping with me the next few weeks to get me something, which, as you might expect, never happened. I don't feel despised towards my sisters. I'm glad they have a home where they are cared for and that they can feel loved. I just don't understand why they would adopt me if they just throw me away like a piece of paper. I think they just wanted to have this feeling to have a son for some time. But then they realized they could never love me like one of their own, and putting me into the basement was the last straw. That is when they completely banished me from their minds, and I just can't do this anymore. I decided to pack my things and leave. I will do it tonight. I will stay at a friend's house for a while and try to look for a job that hopefully gets me enough money so that I can rent an apartment. And after that, I will never look back. I decided to leave a letter behind in my room. I wouldn't be surprised if they never even find it, let alone notice that I'm even gone. I used a throwaway account for this, but I actually don't know why. I thought I don't want them to see this. But now that I think about it, I could send them this post. I don't even know why I even wrote this here in the first place. I feel so desperate. Maybe I want this because I hope that someone is interested in me and my story. And now for some advice before reading the update. Anonymous Forever says, make sure you take your birth certificate and social security card when you go. You'll need them. Also, your high school diploma if you've graduated. Get a post office box for mail so that you can have being sent to you in one place of paper mail so you don't have to worry that you can't get mail. This person also says see if the P.O. box can be used as a street address. In the US, it's common, but I don't know about your location, Gunga Danish Gallagher says. I agree with everything people are writing here. You can go online and for $1 or $2, you can have all the mail in your name forwarded to your new address. And just like others have said, get everything that relates to your identity. I wish you well, and I hope you check back here to see the support many have offered. Please keep us updated, because unlike your current family, we do care. I have a cousin who is adopted, and I've always treated and loved him like my brother. No child should ever go through that which you have. As far as being on your own, there are so many jobs in the marketplace right now where you can build a career and at least become self-sufficient. Think of employers who also pay for college. UPS is a major hub in my city, and they will pay a decent wage as well as cover tuition for higher education. Stay focused and driven, then you can achieve anything. I wish you luck out there. Learn and grow from every experience you've had and will have in the years to come. Don't allow hate to fill your mind. Instead, try to focus on how you will live a different life than what was taught to you. Okay, enough of my dad talk. Seriously, man, take care of yourself and stay safe. Family is what? And who you make it with. Please post back to let us know you're okay again. We care now for the updates. Update 1, I didn't expect to give you an update so quickly, but in the brief time span between my post yesterday and this one right here, so many things have happened that I have to update you right now. Let's start by what happened yesterday. First of all, I have never expected my post to blow up like this. This is absolutely insane. I tried to read all of your comments and answer all of your direct messages, but it's just too many. So I'm sorry if I ignored you. Many of you had great advice, such as taking all of my documents with me and go to the police, which I wanted to do today. Let's go through everything that happened chronologically. After reading through many comments, I decided to take my documents with me. So that evening, before my adoptive parents went to bed, I snuck into their bedroom and took all the documents that I could find, and waited for nightfall. I packed my things and left when all of them were asleep. Everything. when, as planned, I silently left the house and went to my best friend's home. He had an apartment in a neighbor city, so I had to walk for a while. I arrived at his apartment between 2 and 3 a.m. He had a spare bedroom that he used for visitors who might want to stay for the night. We agreed that I could live with him as long as I want. He only expected me to find a job quickly, and if I do that, he would want me to help him pay for the rent. I was fine with that. I slept through the night, and at the morning I started looking for jobs immediately. But now a few hours, something more than interesting happened while I was on his laptop, looking through the online job advertisements and collecting them. The doorbell rang. He opened the door, and I heard a familiar voice. But it wasn't one of my parents. It was one of my sisters. Maria, to be exact. The middle sister. I heard how she had asked if I was here. He wanted to lie for me, but I decided to talk to her to find out what she wanted. So I appeared behind him, and she went. "Thank God you're here," and hugged me. I was completely overwhelmed and surprised and didn't know what to say. And then she told me how she found me. And this is where things get more interesting. She told me that this morning, a way to a familiar sounding story appeared on her TikTok For You page. Apparently, my story was shared by a TikTok account who actually had a big audience, and she became even more suspicious of the situation when her and the name of her sisters were also mentioned. To be sure about the situation, she went into the basement and into my room where she found the room mostly empty, and of course, my letter. I mentioned in the story that I would stay with a friend, so she went out looking for me, telling her parents she was about to visit a friend. She said that she drove to 2 different houses before finding the correct address. She apparently visited 2 other friends of mine before finding the correct apartment. Apparently, she took the letter with her. She said that she hasn't shown them the letter yet and wanted to talk to me first. No one besides her knew where I was or what I did last night. She apologized to me and offered to talk with her on my side to her parents. She explained the way that I talked about her in the original post made her feel bad. She said that she never hated me or anything. She admitted that she also protested against me having a room on their floor. But just because of Alicia's influence on her and because she believed her lies when she was younger. Now that I think about it, unlike Alicia and Juliet, she never called me bad names. She said that Juliet probably also is just insufferable because of how Alicia manipulated her. She said that she never realized how bad I was treated. She never gave a second thought about me because Alicia spread rumors that I was just very socially awkward and overall didn't like any of them, and that I should just lock myself inside the basement like the worst introvert and all of that. And as a reason for her claims, she just reminded them that I was adopted, and that is why I would try to make myself the outsider. I said to her that this might explain why she and Juliet might have been like that to me, but not why my parents would have behaved that way. She replied that she also can just make claims here without any proof, but she thinks it's because even between them, Alicia is the golden child as the firstborn. Her and Juliet are only the failed attempts of them. Having a boy and her being the golden child made it easier for her to manipulate both of them into believing the lies she told them. Then she said that she knows the mom and dad would be pretty easy to manipulate if you know how. And then she gave me 4 options. 1, I could come with her right now and talk with her to my parents. 2, she would let me think about it and leave, but not tell my parents. 3, I refused to go back with her entirely because she would tell them about the letter without telling them where to find me. 4, I refused to go back with her entirely, but she would pretend not to know anything but maybe stay in contact with me. I picked option 2 and she gave me her number. She said that if I decided to give them a chance, she would support me, but she would understand if I refused to. And now we are here. I don't know what to do. I would lie if I say that I wasn't tempted to give them a chance. But on the other hand, if it's true that Alicia is behind all of this, I don't know if I want to deal with her again. Update 2. I started this by saying that many of your comments suggested that Maria could have potentially manipulated me, and that I shouldn't trust her just now, which I understand. I decided to stay with my friend, especially since I applied for so many jobs yesterday, and I think I could find one in no time. So there is no reason for me to get back with them as an 18-year-old. But these are just side facts. I wouldn't have given you an update if nothing had happened. Apparently my adoptive parents did realize I was gone recently, so they started looking for me. They are sure that Maria knew where I was, considering that she had my letter with her. I am only currently in contact with Maria, who told me all of this. Apparently my parents tried asking her about my whereabouts and grounded her after she refused to tell them. Yes, they grounded a 21-year-old. Couldn't believe it either. As many of you have suggested, I went to the police so they couldn't file a missing report about me. And meanwhile, Alicia started to spread rumors again. Apparently, she used my disappearance as a proof that she was right with everything. And Juliet believes every single word. She is completely under Alicia's control. Even though I didn't want to see them again, I kind of want to give Maria a chance. I asked my friend if, hypothetically, Maria could stay with us too. He raised an eyebrow and said, only if she wants to sleep on the couch. And then he asked me why I want her here in the first place. The thing is, as if she cares about me, then I don't want her to stay with this family. He was annoyed, but said yes. I texted her, asking if she considered to move out and offered her to stay with me and my friend. Before you say it, I know it seems like a way to quick decision, but I truly think that Maria is not like the rest of them. Many of you said that she probably wanted to save face, but someone wouldn't go through all of that to find me and then protect me by keeping my whereabouts a secret. If they just wanted to save face, considering that I never mentioned their last names or where they live, so it's not like anyone could have known it was her in real life. I honestly think that my story opened her eyes. She answered by asking if I was for real and that she wasn't sure. I reminded her that she is 21 and probably should think about moving out of her parents' house anyway, and that she was grounded at her age is pretty effed up. They treat their children like 10-year-olds, even though they are adults. She said that she is not denying that she would like that, because apparently Alicia also started spreading lies about her too, because of how she behaves towards me. She overheard how she was talking to her friends about her and that she was called the complicit of a maniac. I still don't know why Alicia hates me so much, but I don't care about it. She said that she doesn't think it's a bad idea, but she wants to find a job to have financial stability first before moving out. And that was fair enough. And my friend was happier about this too. He said he isn't really excited of having another jobless person living with him, but he said that if she has a job, he gladly would help her. One more reason why I think that Maria moving out isn't a bad idea is because if both her and me have jobs, we could probably rent an apartment together in no time and would not have any financial problems. So, yeah, that's it for now. Let's see what happens in our future. I want to mention one more thing. On my last post, some people were talking badly about the TikTok account. Has shared my story. Please don't talk badly about the account. They didn't know it would end like that. And I don't have a problem with anyone sharing my story. Thank you for reading. Edit. Some of you pointed out the situation with my friend. Believe me, if I wasn't sure he was okay with it, I would not have suggested it. He was unsure about the offer at first because I hadn't asked her before asking him. So of course he thought I was just another jobless person. But like I said, he is fine with it as long as she has a job, and I'm definitely grateful for what he is doing and I will repay his kindness. Don't worry about that. What he does should not be taken for granted. And I know that you're also right that offering her to live in his apartment is going to be a bit far. But like I said, he is an amazing person. I wouldn't do it if I knew he wasn't 100% okay with it. Update 3. I want to keep you updated. So here I am again. Today I got a call from Alicia and apparently nothing is what it seems to be. I still try to process this call. I've been in contact with Maria for a few days and I truly thought she was different. But she was just like the others. When I got the call today, it was an unknown number. I froze when I heard Alicia's voice. She screamed at me saying that. Who the hell do I think I am to talk about her like that? We had a little argument, but somehow managed to calm down. I thought about hanging up, but I wondered what she wanted from me. She told me to grow up. I was never part of their family, according to her, and that I should have known it since the beginning. And stop crying about it now when I could have done something about it the entire time. I admit I was angry and not very nice. I told her to go fuck herself and told her I was going to get Maria out of there too, because both of us wouldn't deserve a life around someone like her. Then she said something I guess she shouldn't have said. She said that it was ridiculous because Maria was part of all this theater. And if I truly thought mom and dad cared about me, then she accused me of trying to ruin her family and told me what really happened after I left. They tried to save their face. Maria hasn't told me the full story. Apparently, it's true that she was the one who found my story on TikTok by accident. And she also found the letter first. In Maria's version of the story, she lied to mom and dad and told them she was about to visit her friend when she was looking for me, and they didn't know about it. But Alicia said that Maria told mom and dad immediately after finding my letter. This also answers the question how Maria knew about my friend's address. I never told this to anyone except my adoptive mom. They thought if they fooled me into thinking I had someone on my side, it would be easier for them to get to me because they assumed I probably wouldn't open the door for them. I couldn't believe it, and asked why I would believe someone like her. To which she replied, "Who do you think gave me your number?" Then she demanded me to take down my post and hung up. Honestly, I kind of believe her, but it also proves that they are all the same. They try to manipulate me to get back with them, to save their reputation. Many of you guys warned me about this, but even after everything that happened, I didn't want to believe someone could be this evil. That's it. I will come any contact with them. I am not taking my post down. Everyone deserves to know what these people are. I cannot believe I tried so desperately to see the good in them. Oh, some of you might want to know that. I also apologize to my friend for offering room that wasn't mine to begin with. I understand your critique about this, and you are right. I crossed a line there. That being said, the chapter Adoptive Dickhead Family is hopefully closed now. I try to focus on my life, and maybe someday I will find someone who truly loves me. I might keep you updated if anything is going to happen, but I think this could as well be the last post of this throwaway account. Wish me luck. See ya. Last update after the last update post, which I wanted to be the final update post. Many people in the comments accused me of faking my story. They tried to find contradictions in my story to prove that I was lying and accused me of faking for clout and Reddit karma. Even though I don't really know what Reddit karma is, me answering to their attempts at defamation gets downvoted. I'm not lying with anything. I wish all of them the best, but I don't want to have anything to do with this family. A few people pointed out that Juliet and Alicia made posts of their own, but apparently these posts got deleted because I cannot find them. I also can imagine they are just fake profiles and that they are not the real ones. You can post them under this post if they can be found somewhere. But no matter what they wrote, I'm sure that if they are real, they are trying to save their reputation by telling you lies. I would like to appeal to you to not believe anything that they say. The backlash of my last post and the people calling me a liar, however, is frustrating. And right now, I need some peace and focus on my life and things that feel good to me. I hope you can understand that I'm going to keep my account here for 2 days and then delete it. This way, I can leave this behind, and no one of the negative comments can accuse me of hiding anything or doing it for clout or credit karma, and everyone should be able to read my story before it gets deleted, to those who support me. I want to thank you so much. I felt safe enough to share my story and even update you when I made the first post and never thought it would reach so many people. So thank you all so much. Edit. Okay, I just found Juliet's post on the same TikTok page that shared my story, and this post is completely fake. My name has not been suggested in this post. It's more like a fan fiction of my story where someone who has nothing to do with her family tried to add their perspective, and the situations that were described there never happened. It's not even that they happen, it's just a different perspective. No, it's completely made up. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you. My sister and I have never been close, other than the huge age gap. My parents have always treated us differently. Before she was born, Dad lost his job and we had to rent out our house and move into a small place. We had to change a lot of things because we didn't have much to work with. Dad was really trying to find a new job, but it was getting harder and harder. So both Mom and Dad began applying everywhere they could. Then out of nowhere, Mom got a call from someone she used to work with. He said he was starting something new and wanted people he could trust to join his team. At that time, the pay wasn't much, but it was certainly more than what we had going. Mom immediately accepted. 6 months had passed and Dad was finally hired. We were doing better, but we had to pay off quite a few people because my parents had borrowed money while we were still at the house. 3 months after Dad lost his job, we moved out and rented it. They understood that it would be a while before everything went back to how it used to be, so we made the choice to keep renting the house. About a year later, Mom found out she was going to have a baby. Although things had calmed down, they thought it would be wise to use the rent money to help with the costs for Mom and the new baby. We ended up moving to a slightly larger apartment. My parents had learned the importance of money by then, so they were really cautious with how they spent it. In all this time that had passed, my communication with my parents had turned to hi, good morning, and bye. They were so worried about money that it was all they talked about. The first time we shifted, I used to wait for them to come back. First, it was only Dad who came back late. Then it was Mom. When they were back home, they were so tired that they wouldn't even glance at me. If I tried talking to them or going in for a hug, they would get irritated and take me off. I understood that my parents were stressed, but I think they could at least afford to smile at me. A small one would have done too. I basically bathed myself, did the laundry by hand, made sandwiches when I was hungry, and walked myself to school. I tried to be as independent as I could. They, on the other hand, hadn't even noticed I was trying my best to help them out. After we shifted a second time, all focus was on Mom. Since she was pregnant, he tried to keep her as comfortable as he could. Mom didn't stop working, but she didn't work as late. I was excited about the news of Mom's pregnancy. I thought having another sibling would be great for company. I tried to express my happiness, but Mom seemed easily annoyed. Every time I tried to talk to her, she'd just tell me to leave her alone. Dad was busy working throughout the day, often coming home later than Mom. But whenever he did, he'd always bring something for either Mom or the baby. He would just ignore me saying he was tired. I was basically a stranger in my own home. I used to cry myself to sleep even if they heard me. They would ignore me and shut their door. 3 months after my dad lost his job, I was shifted to a public school. They had enrolled me back in my previous one, and after Mom became pregnant, I knew they weren't going to. I wanted to go back to my old school and friends. I wanted to meet them. It was so lonely at home in that school. Nobody really spoke to me. I just wanted to talk to someone. As Mom's bump got bigger and bigger, they wouldn't even acknowledge my presence. It was as if I wasn't even there. I was sad and hurt. They didn't pay attention to what I had to say, so I felt helpless. Mom was nearing the end of her pregnancy, just days away from having the baby. We didn't have any family nearby, at least not that I knew of. I ended up staying home alone for days while Mom was in the hospital. Even though I was alone, I didn't say anything about it. I just wanted her to be okay. And I wanted to see the baby. After they came home, they were busy. The baby was always in either of their arms. I asked if I could see her, and Dad let me into their room. Mom was breastfeeding her and got agitated. She told me to get out. Dad didn't say anything. I didn't get to spend time with my sister or hold her. Mom was very protective of her dad. At least tried a couple of times to let me be near her. But Mom didn't let it happen. It was as if she hated me, and I didn't understand why. I could clearly see that she loved my sister. A few months after Mom was able to recover, my parents decided to move into the house we owned. I thought maybe when we moved back, things would get better, but it wasn't the case. As time passed, their behavior towards me only worsened. One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore and had a breakdown in front of them while they were in the hallway. I accidentally woke up my sister, and seeing me upset made her cry. Now everyone was angry with me, and I couldn't stop crying. Dad dragged me back up and locked me in my room, telling me to shut up. I fell asleep crying. They didn't want me, and I realized that though they owned a house, it wasn't very big. It had only 2 bedrooms, so they put me in the attic to make room for my sister. I had to clean the attic myself. It was horrible. Up, down, so cold. On top of that, it was the darkest place ever. I hated it. There was no wiring in there, so there was no possible AC of light. I would go up there, and when my parents had gone to bed, I would go back down and sleep on the couch. They had caught me a few times, but didn't really care, as long as I was out of their way. As I got older, I found a job, but I didn't tell them about it. When I received my first paycheck, I had this urge to buy something for them, hoping it might make them like me more. However, I realized it might not solve anything, so I decided against it and just kept the money. I didn't even buy anything for myself. But as time passed, it was soon approaching the moment for university, and I found myself with little money saved up. It wasn't enough to cover the university fees, food, and living costs. I tried bringing it up, but they clearly declined, saying they didn't have much. They were even surprised I had brought up university. All that focus was on my sister, and I didn't blame her for that. Even growing up, she wasn't rude to me. We didn't talk, and I didn't hold a grudge either. It felt like a lost cause. My parents never really encouraged a bond between us. Even when my sister would try to connect with me or I'd reach out to her, it always ended in drama. I couldn't handle the tension that followed, so I kept my distance. They behaved as if I would somehow cause harm to her. I had to endure it, though, and just keep my feelings to myself. My only chance of going to university was if I got sponsored by a full scholarship. I was a smart kid. I was hoping I would get it. I used to go to my neighbor's house and use his laptop. He was new to the area and had a daughter. She was a year younger than me. I applied for a whole lot of scholarships. I managed to get into a good university, but I couldn't get a full scholarship. I had to cover my own living and food costs. The university was 2 states away, but I knew I could get there. I managed to get in contact with a cafe owner and ask for work. She was an older lady and was very sweet. It turned out she had been there for a while before I even arrived. When I left, my parents didn't seem to notice or care. If I hadn't told them, they might not have even realized I was gone. I didn't have a plan for where to live since everything was so costly and required a down payment. When I arrived, I approached the owner of a cafe, an elderly lady, and asked if I could stay there temporarily while I figured out a more permanent place to live. She took pity on me and told me there was a room upstairs where she stayed and I could stay with her, but she would cut it off my paycheck. I was honestly just happy I didn't have to sleep on the streets. I had very little cash left, and I didn't want to spend it on a motel. While there, I took on a few more jobs in my free time. The old lady was clearly worried about me, which surprised me. I hadn't seen that expression directed at me in so long. Slowly, I settled down. I got through university and managed to land a position through pre-placements. That was probably the first time I bought myself remotely expensive clothes. It was for the interview. My worn-out hoodie wouldn't do. Once I received my offer letter, the first person I shared the news with was the cafe owner. She had been there for me when I needed support that my parents couldn't provide. I'll always appreciate her for that. She celebrated with me, hugging and kissing me, expressing how proud she was. That day, I couldn't hold back my tears. She had become like family to me, and I had a deep love and appreciation for her. She helped me move after I graduated. I needed to find a place closer to my job, and she came with me to help me decide. Even after I got settled there, I went down at least once or twice a month to visit her. We spoke regularly. I had tried to keep in contact with my parents, but they never answered my calls, not even once. Sometimes my sister would pick up, but it would be an awkward conversation. I eventually stopped calling them. While working there, I made friends. I was an introverted person, but they made an effort to talk to me. They would invite me when they would go out. I would usually decline, but sometimes they would convince me to go. Roughly a year later, the company offered free tickets for a small getaway. Each employee could bring one person. I made the choice to use my saved vacation days, I hadn't used any before, and invited the only person I considered family, the woman from the cafe. I affectionately called her Auntie, since she wasn't quite old enough to be a grandma. She suggested I bring someone else, but I was adamant that she should come with me. All my friends were at the company, and they all had trip tickets. They had asked me who I was bringing along and wanted to meet her, so we planned to go on vacation together. Funnily enough, she was an extrovert and got along well with them. I was still a shy person, and they would drag me around wherever they went on that trip itself. A guy approached me. My auntie was squealing when that happened and made me go with him. He was visiting here too. I have to give her credit. The man I met there is now my husband. He lived about half an hour from where I worked. When we got back from the trip, he called me up and asked me out. He was incredibly patient. Our relationship started with 2 months of dating, then blossomed into a 3-year commitment before we tied the knot, and we've been happily married for 4 years now. When it came time for our wedding, I extended invitations to my parents and sister, but none of them showed up. My then fiance, who knew about my difficult family history, was deeply upset by their absence. In fact, he was so upset that he didn't even want to invite them in the first place. A year or two later, my sister got married. I was not invited. That's okay. I saw a few pictures online and congratulated her. It was a lavish wedding. She was around 22 or 23, so I knew she couldn't afford it. Our parents had to have paid for it. I didn't mind. I had moved on and was happy with my life. I was pregnant with our first child, and my husband was elated. He was so excited. His parents had become my parents, and my aunt visited frequently too. Sometimes all of them would stay with us during my pregnancy. Suddenly one day, my aunt received a letter in my name. I was surprised by who it was. It was my parents. So, she offered to deliver the letter to me if I wished. I thought perhaps they had learned about my pregnancy and were trying to reconnect. It brought a flicker of happiness during my university days. I updated them about my current address and contact information, as everything had changed since our last communication. I was already 5 months into my pregnancy when I had this conversation, and I discussed it with my husband. He was very hesitant about that letter. He tried to explain his perspective to me, and it made sense. They hadn't reached out to me for years, and now they've popped up out of nowhere. I guess I was a little more than happy that they had reached out. It blinded me for a moment. He asked me if he could read the letter first, just in case there were some inappropriate things in there. I didn't really mind waiting. My husband was incredibly cautious about everything, especially because I was pregnant. After a couple of days, my aunt arrived with the letter, and it definitely wasn't what I had anticipated. When my husband read it, his expression twisted into one of disgust. I had never seen him so furious with anyone before. He handed the letter to my aunt and then just came over and hugged me tightly. I asked him what was written, and he just looked at me with so much sadness, and hugged me again. He told me that I shouldn't read it and that it was disgusting. I wanted to get it over with, so I just held his hand and asked my aunt to read it aloud. My parents had lost their own house. They were kicked out because of their dear daughter. Before I had left, I knew that they had put the house in her name to fund her lavish wedding with her now divorced husband. She had mortgaged the house. My parents knew about it, and they had put in their own money too. Now they're asking me to pay them back the money I supposedly owe them for taking care of me for so many years. That news hit me like a wave. My sister's ex-husband refused to cover the mortgage, and she couldn't manage it either. I sat there trying to process it all, with a blank expression. My husband's arms stayed around me, comforting me with gentle rubs on my back. But inside, it was just an overwhelming disappointment. That night, I went to bed in tears, feeling a heavy weight of sadness. I couldn't help but feel guilty about it all. I didn't want my unborn baby to be affected by the selfish actions of my parents, but they were going to get payback. I wasn't going to be nice about it. I was happy, and I wanted to continue to be happy. I wasn't going to let them come in and have their way. They did get a response, but from my lawyer, it was a warning that if they sent me any more letters and tried to contact me again, they would be sued for harassment. They also got another letter attached from my lawyer informing them of child neglect. I made sure to let them know that I didn't owe them anything. From the clothes that I wore to the food that I ate, to the house that I owned, it was all me. Sure, after I got married, that was both me and my husband's hard work and efforts. Before all this, I worked my way through school and college entirely on my own. I hustled hard, and my efforts paid off. I landed a job and even got promoted, solely because of the sheer hard work I put in. But through all of that, they weren't there. They didn't support me financially or emotionally for any of it. And those scraps I made sandwiches from, or the leftovers I barely managed to eat, those definitely didn't count as the care or sustenance I needed. So I owe them nothing. I also told them that they contacted the wrong child. The child, the old them, was there. Their daughter, who mortgaged the house they put in her name. Since they've dug the hole they're in, they can climb out of it by themselves. Update 1. 2 months later, I'm close to my delivery date now. I thought I would update you on my current situation. This will be the last update. My parents haven't contacted me. From what I know, my sister gave the house to the bank. I don't know if they owe anyone anymore, but they are back to where they started. AAOP went through too much shit. Did they seriously have the guts to ask for money that their little princess lost? Bad things happen to bad people, AJ. I hope you have a safe delivery. Next story. I'm still fuming over this, so forgive me if this post isn't perfectly put together. I just need some third-party insight. Hi, 26 female, have a 28-year-old sister. Let's call her JJ, is a mother to 3 kids aged 4, 7, and 8 years old. The father is a really absent parent and not around much. He works the night shift and then sleeps all day. I feel bad for her because it definitely isn't a fair situation, and she doesn't get any time to herself. Anyway, the situation is this. My sister invited me to hang out on Saturday night. I agreed to come around and hang out with her, but she said she would have to leave to run an errand at some point. She told me she'd only be gone for about half an hour. She asked if I could keep an eye on her youngest child who was asleep while she quickly went out to take care of something. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed reluctantly. The other 2 kids were already staying at our parents' place for the weekend, so I understood that she probably wanted some time to herself to handle the errand. It was rare for her to get even half an hour of free time, given how busy she usually was with the kids. She promised it would be. I come over, we chat and catch up and watch a movie. It's really pleasant until she says she has to leave for that errand and leaves me instructions on what to do in case the kid wakes up, but says to just call her because she's only around the corner. I'm really on edge about it because I struggle a lot with really bad anxiety and panic disorder, which I'm currently in therapy and experimenting with meds to manage. But truthfully, we haven't discovered any method that truly works for me to handle looking after kids for an extended period. She's well aware of this and knows that I would really struggle and potentially panic if I had to care for a child for longer than the time she initially promised. Mentally, I'm just not in the right place to handle situations like a crying child, for instance. So, the half hour she mentioned passes, and she hasn't returned. Another 15 minutes go by, making it 45 minutes in total. I start to worry and decide to give her a call to check if everything's all right and when she plans to be back. After multiple rings, she finally picks up the phone. She said something came up and she'd be another hour, maybe an hour and 15. I basically lost my shit and say, if she's not back in 15 minutes, then I'm leaving. She said I wouldn't do that, and to please just stay there, and hung up. At this point, I'm on the verge of having a panic attack, so do my breathing exercises, when her husband leave a message when he does not. So text him about the situation as well, and also text my mom and leave about 15 minutes, as I said. Apparently, my sister didn't come home for another 2 hours, and when she did, her husband was with the child, and they are both fuming. He got my message 15 minutes after I left, so 30 minutes after I sent it. Now both of them are giving me the silent treatment, accusing me of putting the child's life in danger. I can't help but feel that staying there longer might have made things worse. After all, the kids were fast asleep throughout, and if I had a panic attack, it might have startled the little one awake to see me in a state of disarray. She H. Your sister shouldn't have left her kid with someone incapable of taking care of a kid. She can get charged with abandonment. You left a 4-year-old alone, putting his life in danger, and also possibly risking legal trouble. How far away do your parents live? Could you not have called them cold? Any local friends called the damn cops? Why do you don't leave a 4-year-old by themselves in the house? Anything could happen. I hope you never have kids.